How did the New York Giants rookies fare during the first day of rookie minicamp? I'm going to tell you all about it coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Trainer, your host, P-Train, and of course, I'm a credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for the Giants team page over on the Fan Nation Network. You can find the written work at si.com/NFL/Giants. And a special welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And thank you for hanging in there with me. Normally we release our shows the night before. This one I wanted to wait on because Rookie Minicamp is here. And I was at Rookie Minicamp, the first day of Rookie Minicamp. I'll be at the second one. And today's show is actually going to cover the first day of Rookie Minicamp. We're going to talk about basically some observations. We're going to talk about notable names that were there, new things that I've observed. So basically going to give you all the little details that I wrote down in my notebook and just share those with you. So again, thank you and welcome on in. Now, before we get started, the purpose of the Rookie Minicamp is not necessarily to see who's, going to win a job, who's not going to win a job. It's pretty much an orientation period. So the Giants, they brought in their 6-member draft class, 2 of whom were signed. Malik Neighbors signed his contract today. Tyrone Tracy signed his contract yesterday. They brought in 8 undrafted free agents, one of which, Jude McAtamy, the kicker, they got an exemption on because he's got international status. So they have 8 UDFAs total. They had waived running back Deion Jackson, so he's off the team as they make room for some of these acquisitions they made, such as Nathan Rourke. But really, this camp, a lot of instruction, a lot of drills. There wasn't any 11 on 11. There was more 7 on 7 and 5 on 7, stuff like that. Obviously, no contact, but we were able to watch the various drill stations going on, and that's really what I'm going to talk about for this first segment. What I observed, what's kind of stood out. So I'm going to kick things off with some of the draft picks and what I was able to see. Now, obviously, I wasn't able to see all of it because we were in the field house. And when we're in the field house, because of the weather, we're limited to a certain spot that we can stand on. When we get outside, hopefully we'll be able to get outside on Saturday. I'll be able to see a little bit more. But a couple of things that jumped out at me. Malik Neighbors, my gosh, you guys are going to love this kid. You are going to absolutely love him. He is a competitor. He is a kid who he made one catch. I mean, the best way I can describe it is the ball was off target. Instead of hitting him between the numbers, it was kind of sailing over his left shoulder, and he kind of reached back to grab it, and he grabbed it, brought it down, and was off to the races after making that catch. So good hand-eye coordination. The speed is definitely there. Very shifty, very difficult, I think, for defensive backs to cover. I can't wait to see how they line him up in this offense. He's going to be a chess piece. And I think that Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, Brian Dable, they're going to have a lot of fun with lining this guy up in different spots. Tyrone Tracy, the 5th-round running back, smooth as silk out of the backfield. And that's not a surprise, really. This is a young man who was previously a wide receiver before he converted to running back. But, as a running back, what kind of was impressive with him is his vision. I mean, he was spotting little creases and slipping through, they were running this kind of drill with pads where they were trying to create like blockers, and he was evading the contact with the blockers. So really shifty, good change of direction, good hands out of the backfield. Like I said, now What I ultimately want to see, and we're not going to see this until the pads go on, is how well he does with pass protection. If you caught the show the other day with Coach Kennard, his running back coach, he talked about how Tracy picks up a lot of yardage after contact. So that's something I want to see how he does at this level with yards after contact. All right. Tyler Newman, the safety. The safeties were doing some drills like right in front of us, so I was able to get a pretty good view on him. I'm just amazed at how this kid just seems to be around the ball all the time. And it's interesting in his press conference, someone asked him, you know, are you always around the ball or is the ball always around you? And he very, he basically said, look, it's my preparation. But what I noticed about him is in those drills, the eyes, and playing it, his head was constantly moving. Um, just the tracking of the ball and where it was going and just getting himself quickly into position to either get a hand on it to knock it away or to get a hand on it to keep it for the defense. So Tyler Newman, I thought looked really good in these drills. Again, they're just drills. They're not offense versus defense, but very promising start for Tyler Newman. Theo Johnson, big, big, big man. Um, Good size, uh, smooth hands, soft hands. Um, I don't know how much of a blocker he's going to be for the Giants. I don't know if they're going to ask him to do that a lot, but he just again in the pass catching drills, and he would quickly like catch it and then turn upfield and run before a defender could get a pad on him. Meaning, the little pads that they use to kind of to simulate a tackle attempt or something like that. So Theo Johnson to me looked pretty good. Now, one undrafted free agent that right away jumped out at me because he was like a man amongst boys. And again, the defensive linemen and they were like right in front of us. So one guy who really jumped out at me was defensive tackle Casey Rogers. And it's interesting because when I was watching Rogers, and I'm going to date myself here, but I made the observation on my Twitter account that Rogers reminded me somewhat of Chad Bratsky, who played for this team back in the 90s. I think it was like 1994 or something like that. And I'm not sure why I made that comparison, but I turned to another longtime writer and I said, tell me he doesn't remind you of Chad Bratsky. And we agreed that the style was that of Chad Bratsky. He was a pretty good player, as I recall, for the Giants when he was here. And then I think he went to the Colts to finish up his career. But anyway, Casey Rogers, the thing that really stood out is they were doing agility drills with the bags that they put on the field. So basically, the defensive linemen, what they have to do is they have to shuffle their feet over the bags, not make contact with the bags. They also have to bend down and touch like a little cone that's on the ground. And then there was another drill where they had this like I don't know what it's called, but it was like a tent. It kind of like a something that you have to bend underneath. I call it, for lack of a better term, like a limbo stick, but it's not a stick. It's actually like a tent. And Casey Rogers, I mean, his footwork was polished, number one. Did a good job bending at the waist, and I think he was the only one of the defensive linemen in the drills that didn't touch the bags, which meant that his drill work was clean. So that's somebody very early on I'm going to be keeping an eye on once we get to summer training camp, because the Giants defensive line, as you guys know, Giants didn't draft any defensive linemen nor offensive linemen for that matter. But, that's another story we'll talk about another day. So I know it's early. And it's, obviously you got to go and have the rookies go up against the veterans. But Casey Rogers was a player amongst the undrafted free agents that to me stood out in a good way. So somebody to keep an eye on. All right, now coming up next, I'm going to talk about some changes that I noticed in the practice. Interesting stuff that at least I found interesting. So I'll tell you all about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Hey, Giant fans. So, when I'm not following the New York Giants, there's no greater thrill for me than playoff hockey. And with the New York Rangers in the thick of the Stanley Cup hunt, how cool would it be to get to a game to cheer the blue shirts on? What's that? Sold out, you say? Ha. Well, with Game Time, there are always great seats available at competitive prices. Game Time offers last minute ticket deals that can save you even more, and they take the guesswork out of what your seat view looks like, the fees, and all that other stuff that can make ticket buying a nightmare elsewhere. With Game Time, you even get event cancellation protection. And if you find tickets elsewhere in the same section and row for less, Game Time will give you 110% of the difference. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Terms apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And coming up next week, we've got all new episodes of Locked On Giants. I'm still trying to schedule a couple of assistant coaches from the college programs. So I'm working on that. I'll have more on the rookie mini camp, obviously. So just plenty of stuff. There's no shortage of content here on Locked On. And there's going to be a lot to talk about, what with OTAs coming up later on in the month, the mandatory mini camp, and all that good stuff. So hope you will keep visiting us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Your presence is, of course, appreciated. All right. In this segment, what's new at the Giants? All right. Now, by that, I mean, what kind of new drills, what kind of new things did we see at practice? Every year, head coach Brian Dable talks about how they try to evolve as a staff, how they try to do different things to improve, the performance of the team, to become more efficient. So I wanted to really pay attention in this practice to how new defensive coordinator Shane Bowen ran things. So, when they were in the individual groups, Bowen was obviously he was going from group to group to kind of, watch and provide instruction and whatnot. But there was one thing in particular that really stood out to me. And I thought that, it was new. It was something that I don't remember seeing in previous years. Matter of fact, from any defensive coordinator. And I really thought it was kind of clever considering what Shane Bowen is probably going to do with this defense. Now, what he's probably going to do is he's probably going to ask his players to partake in a lot of zone coverage. Now, zone coverage typically is a little easier to play than man-to-man, but you've got to be able to know the depth of your zone, passing guys off from zone to zone, and just, being able to recognize stuff. So what I thought was pretty interesting about the way they were teaching the zone coverage to the back end of the defense, the linebackers and the defensive backs, is they would have staff members wear a vest that had a letter on it. And the letter designated or stood for the position that the person was playing. So, for example, anybody who had X was the X receiver. Y was the Y, the tight end. You had H for the H back, or if it was a running back, it was the running back. That you had the Z, all the different letters that you would normally find on offense. And what they did was they ran the plays slow mo. So the staff members kind of ran the plays in slow motion. And as they were developing the plays, Bowen was directed traffic. So he was telling, for example, this linebacker, okay, you go approximately 3 yards to your left if the X goes this way, and if he goes to the other way, you go 3 yards the other direction. So just, little specific instructions like that. And you can kind of see as you were watching the drills, you were watching how usually where there's soft spots in zone coverage, there wasn't that many soft spots. I mean, there were holes, but not a whole lot of holes where, the defenders maybe couldn't recap or recover, I should say, and close up the hole to prevent a receiver from, finding daylight or finding the soft spot in the zone coverage. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The other thing I really found interesting, and I think those of you who worry about injuries might find this interesting as well, is that after practice was done, Aaron Wellman, who is the new executive director of player performance, had all the players gather in a circle, a big circle in the middle of the field. Now, previously, what they would do post practice is they would line up in rows. Wellman had them in a circle. All right. And now that I think about it, that's what he did the first time he was here with the Giants. I remember them being in a circle and they got away from that. They went to, the rows. But anyhow, he had them gather in a circle and they went through a lengthy post-practice stretch period. Every single player did it. All right. Now, I mention that because last couple of years, yes, the Giants did do post-practice stretching. And it just seemed like some guys would finish early and they would head on inside, and some guys would stick around, once the coach blew the whistle. That was not the case. Everybody started together and finished together. And Wellman spent a good, I want to say 10 to 12 minutes roughly with them, making sure they were stretching properly, going over to help with technique, and just basically, offering instruction. I don't have to tell you guys, injuries were a big, big problem with this team in the past. And if they can avoid some of these soft tissue injuries, then, it'll be worth the hire to have Aaron Wellman back. And I think he will clean up the injury history that this team has had. That's one stat you do not want to lead the league in if you're any team for that matter. There was one other thing that I'll mention, and I'm not quite sure why this was set up the way it was, but I'll mention it because I did find it interesting. So, like I said, practice was held inside the field house because it was a rainy day and, just kind of yucky. You didn't want to be outside today if you didn't have to be. So when we came into the field house, normally, the media would gather along one sideline, and we would be able to watch the practice. They had the media in the end zone, closest to the door. All right, no big deal because now you can watch stuff from behind and actually get a little better view. But when we walked into the building, there were metal benches set up in rows, and each bench was kind of like there was like a section in each bench for a player with a piece of paper. There was a piece of paper with the player's name and jersey number. So it was like assigned seating on those metal benches. And when we walked in, practice was not quite getting started, but it was a few minutes away. There were guys sitting on those at their assigned spots, going over their play notes and whatnot, going over, talking to the guys next to them or around them. And I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, I don't ever recall seeing that. I'm really not sure what the purpose was for that. I think somebody joked about, oh, what's the matter? They don't have room in the locker room for these guys. Well, that's not the case. I can tell you that. They do have room in the locker room for these guys. So it wasn't as though, that's what it was. But they basically had them spread out. So I'm really not sure what that was. But in the field house, they have set up like a permanent meeting room in there. It's actually a tent, and that's where the media avails were today. So they have like a projector and stuff like that. And that was initially set up during the COVID pandemic. And I guess they decided to keep that, for whatever the reason. So just those are the main differences I noticed the first day of practice. Now, hopefully, like I said, on Saturday we get outside and see what other changes might happen. But those kind of jumped out at me. I like how Bowen was teaching, how he was floating around from spot to spot. Now, for Saturday, I want to keep an eye on the offensive line because I want to see how Carmen Priscillo teaches. And I also want to see a few other things. I only could see so much from where we were stationed. So that's why I say if we can get outside, maybe we'll be able to see a little bit more. If I have my binoculars with me, I'll be able to see a little bit more. So, anyway, those were the changes. Now, coming up next, some final thoughts from day one of the rookie mini camp. Do not go anywhere. I'll be right back. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things beyond what our favorite sports teams do or don't can really start to get to us. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who can offer a fresh perspective. Therapy can be different for everyone. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and it's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we are talking rookie minicamp. Really, it's an orientation period for the rookies. That's pretty much what they did and what they're going to do on Saturday. But we also had media avails, the first three draft picks, Malik Neighbors, Tyler Nubin, and Andrew Phillips all took the podium, all had interesting things to say. So you can find some of that stuff over on the Giants page that I manage, si.com/NFL/Giants. But also, head coach Brian Dable spoke. So I want to just quick talk about some of the takeaways from those media sessions and my impressions, having, gotten up close and personal, if you will, with some of these players. Malik Neighbors, interestingly, very humble, very reserved, has his nose to the grindstone, so to speak. I thought he was going to be a little flashier. Couldn't be further from the truth. He was very humbled. There was that confidence there, that competitive spirit, but he wasn't like flamboyant or anything like that. And I don't know why I thought he was going to be like that. I guess maybe, you know, he might have been like that at times at LSU, but just very impressed with his maturity level. Very impressed by the fact that he wants to do everything. Like he was telling the story that Mike Groh, the receivers coach, wouldn't let him do everything. And he's like, why? Why can't I do everything? So I thought that was kind of cool. Tyler Nubin, very well spoken, great personality. And I mentioned, earlier in the show, how the ball just seems to find him or finds the ball. So very well spoken young man, great answers. That was the other thing. Sometimes you get these draft picks, they come in and they don't really have a whole lot to say. They're not comfortable in front of the microphone, in front of the media. That wasn't the case for these first three guys. Drew Phillips was another one. Drew Phillips was telling us about jumping cars and how he's not doing that anymore. But the three of them, and again, we're going to get the other three tomorrow. We're going to get Tyrone Tracy, Darius Muaso, and Theo Johnson tomorrow. The three that we got, confident, well-spoken, intelligent, very excited, but not too overly excited, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes if you're a little too overexcited, you can get a little jumpy. So I think the best way to describe it is enthusiastic but focused. So that was very encouraging to see that the maturity level was there. Now, Brian Dable also spoke. Really, the one thing that I found interesting in what he had to say was when he was asked about Nathan Rourke, the quarterback that the Giants claimed off waivers from the New England Patriots a couple days ago. Now, look, Dable said after the draft that they were going to add a fourth quarterback, that they needed to have 3 live arms for training camp. And with Daniel Jones, making progress, but not, nobody really knowing for sure if he's going to be ready. They wanted to have a fourth arm. And they really, liked what Nathan Rourke, who was a CFL star, what he brought to the table. So somebody asked Dable today if the addition of Nathan Rourke was any kind of indication regarding where Daniel Jones was in his rehab from a torn ACL. And Dable basically said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but this is the gist of what he said. He said, well, he's gone through phase 2 of the offseason program. As for phase 3, we'll see. Now, here's what I think is going to happen with Daniel Jones in phase 3. I think he's going to be cleared to do individual drills. I do not think he's going to be cleared to do 11 on 11. I'd be surprised if that happens. Why put him out there right now? You've got plenty of time before, so why not take advantage of that extra time to let him really get right? For training camp, and I know this is still, a ways off, but training camp, again, I could see him maybe starting off slow. I do think he'll be able to pass a physical to where he won't land on the PUP list, but I think he's going to start off slow and in a limited capacity because the focus really is going to be on trying to get Drew Lock up to speed just in case they need him to start the season. So that's the impression I'm getting regarding the quarterbacks. Again, it's early. Things can change. But right now, there's really no point to rush Daniel Jones out there. The season doesn't start until September. Okay, and speaking of the season, for those of you who missed it, the schedule is due to come out on the 15th, which is next Wednesday. So one of the shows that I'll have for you next week is a full breakdown of the schedule. We'll cover just about everything you need to know about that schedule. So just, an FYI there. But anyhow, folks, one more day left of rookie minicamp. Actually, a day and a half, but one more full day with practices and meetings and stuff like that. And then on Sunday, they're going to have a quick meeting, and then they're going to send everybody home for Mother's Day. And then I think some of the rookies are going to be able to come back once, especially those that have signed contracts will be able to come back and step right in into the phase 2 workouts, which resume next week. That is, assuming that their college classes are done. So a lot of stuff coming up. And again, OTAs start later this month, and I'll bring you everything. I will be there. As long as the good Lord lets me, I will be there, and I will bring you all you need to know, as well as maybe some of those interviews. I hope to get to talk to some of these players once we get to the OTAs. So that is going to do it for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. As always, thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And we will see you again Monday. Have a good one.